Good evening, folks. Oh, great. Does not seem like a bad way to start the night. Hello, my name is Melanie Slaybaugh, and I am with the Academy of Music. I'm the Development and Communications Manager there, and I'm the organizer of Valley Voices Story Slam this season. This is our 11th season. Yes. And as you can tell, it is a popular place to be. So thank you so much for coming out. One thing that I really love about the Story Slam is that it is local people telling their local stories. You're going to see your neighbors up here, your friends, your family, your worst enemy maybe, who knows? But it's going to be a great time. We've got 10 storytellers tonight telling their wrong turn stories. So just a few things to get out of the way before we hear our storytellers. So first of all, thank you so much to the Marigold Theater for letting us be here today. This is my first time here. I'm still kind of new to the area, so it's really exciting to me to get to come see these places, and I will definitely be back here. So, yes. All right. Just a couple of things. Safety. In the unlikely and unprecedented event of an emergency, there are exits. The entrance you came through also goes out, so you can go that way. You can go straight back through the lighted up exit over there, but hopefully no one brought any matches or anything like that. That would definitely be a wrong turn. Okay. Also, the Marigold has a few more shows coming up in the next week that you might want to check out. There's a Grateful Dead tribute band called Wolfman Jack that you might want to see. There is the, can't read my own handwriting, Thank you, Heartsbrook and Friends Cabaret that is going to be here as well, and then also a Latin dance with McCoy Jameson, so some things to look at there. Also, the Academy of Music in Northampton, if you haven't been out to visit us, we've got some things coming up. If you like slams like this, we do have another one coming up in March. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. We also have a poetry slam for high school kids coming up in April, so if you want to see some kids do some original poetry up on our stage, that would be a good thing to come see. And if you are cold this winter, but you like cozy movies, come out to see our Stitch and Flicks series where you can bring your knitting and come and watch a movie. Our next one is Groundhog Day on January 25th. Or don't bring your knitting and just come watch Groundhog Day on the big screen. Who doesn't want to do that? All right, so a few things about the Story Slam itself. As I said, we've got 10 storytellers today. We're going to have 5 storytellers in the first half. We're going to have an intermission, and you can go get yourself a drink. And then we're going to have 5 more storytellers in the second half. At the end, you will get to vote on your 2 favorite storytellers. Around the room, I've put some posters with a QR code on it. We're also going to have one up here later, so you can scan the QR code, which is not available right now. So you can scan it if you want to, but you're not going to get anywhere. We are not publishing that until the end of the Story Slam because I know how you are, and you're going to vote now, and it's not fair. So you're going to vote for your 2 favorite storytellers at the end of the night, and then please don't leave because we'll immediately have the results and be able to share those with you. The 3 finalists tonight will go in April to the Best of Valley Voices Story Slam Season 11, which will be at the Academy, April 25th. It's a Saturday night. Tickets are selling fast, so if you want to see that, get your tickets, because it does typically come pretty close to selling out. But those 3 people will compete with the 3 finalists from our last Story Slam in November, which was at Bombix. That theme was cringe. And the next Story Slam will be in March at the Shea, and that theme is homecoming. So those 9 contestants will compete for with the stories that they told at these Story Slams for the Best of in April. So exciting stuff, lots of fun. So these stories that you're going to hear tonight are true first-person accounts from these people's lives. They are not using notes, they are not using props. They are just up here with a microphone telling their stories to you. And it is approximately a 5-minute story, so it's a little bit of pressure too, a little bit of pressure. All right, so I think I covered everything I wanted to cover. So let me introduce our first storyteller of the night. Angela Grout is a writing coach, podcast host, seasoned florist, producer of shows for the stage, including one that just performed off-Broadway, and she just released her 5th novel. In her spare time, she enjoys a good nap. All right, Angela.
Standing here. Okay. I get to go first, so so. So a few weeks before Christmas, my grandmother called me at 5:15 in the morning, frantic, screaming, and hyperventilating. Angela, Father Jerome died. Father Jerome died. Father Jerome died. I could barely understand her. She was telling me Father Jerome died. Now, Father Jerome is the priest that my Gram has been madly, deeply in love with for 35 years. And he knows it because Gram went to confession and told him. Gram is very Catholic, overly Catholic. She gets up every morning and does 2 hours of prayer before she goes to morning mass. She does the rosary every night at 7 p.m., and she has a $20 a day candle habit. And I just gave her the greatest Christmas present. I bought her a little candle shrine for her house with this little gold mailbox. And every Friday I'm going to her house, replenishing the candles, and I'm making $140 a week. It is the best Christmas gift ever. Okay, so like I said, Graham is really Catholic, and she goes to confession every Saturday to Father Jerome. And she tells him his sins. She's 89 years old. What are her sins? I mean, she burnt my grandfather's grilled cheese. She was late for Mass. She was speeding. Yes, she still drives. But how do I know these things? Because Graham calls me on Saturday nights to tell me the sins she was absolved from. So not only does she tell Father Jerome, but she tells me, her granddaughter, I don't need to know these things. So the best is the day that she says to Father Jerome, "Forgive me, Father, for I've sinned. I cheated on my husband." Father Jerome said, "What? What do you mean?" She goes, "I masturbated." Well, Father Jerome explained to her that she didn't cheat on her husband. The masturbation's not cheating. It's okay. You didn't cheat. You didn't break a commandment. And then she said, "But I was thinking of you." My grandmother has no filter. Again, I don't need to know this confession. I can't even imagine what he said. I mean, this is ridiculous. But Grandma loves to spread good news. And back in November, she was in the hospital, and she wanted to tell the doctor the good news that masturbation isn't cheating. So she said to the doctor, "Doctor, are you married?" He said, "Yes, I am." And he kind of looked at me like, "Is your grandmother propositioning me here?" She goes, "Have you ever cheated on your wife?" He goes, "No, I don't cheat on my wife." "No, well, that's good," she says. "But if you ever wanted to cheat on your wife, you know what you can do? You can masturbate. You can masturbate, and that's not cheating. And you know what? My granddaughter Angela knows how to masturbate, don't you?" I'm literally looking at the doctor, and he looks at me like, "Oh my God, is there medication for this?" Now, Graham's so excited with this good news that not only did she ask the doctor that, she asked the nurse, she asked the orderly, she asked every maintenance staff member who came in her room, and, of course, the poor dietitian. This poor girl just wanted to bring her lunch. And she comes in, my grandmother says, "Oh, what's your name? You're so pretty." And she goes, "My name's Emily." "Emily, are you married?" And Emily said, "I just got married this year." She said, "Oh, that's great. Well, then you haven't cheated on your husband yet." And I said, "No, I'm never going to cheat on my husband." She goes, "Well, And I go, "Graham, no, you don't have to have this conversation. No, this is important. Emily, if you ever want to cheat on your husband, don't cheat on him. You know what you can do instead? You can masturbate. Emily, do you know how to masturbate? Angela knows how to masturbate. She can show you." I'm looking at Emily. "No, I'm not going to show you. I'm not going to show you." So now here I have my grandmother on the phone with me 2 weeks before Christmas, 5:15 in the morning. "Angela, Father Jerome died. Father Jerome died. What am I going to do? Father Jerome died." I'm like, "Graham, take a deep breath." "Yeah, take some deep breaths. Go get a glass of water." She's bawling. I go take a lorazepam. I'm going to come over to your house right now. I hang up the phone with her, I get dressed, I get in my car, I drive to the end of the street. I'm sitting at the light, and I'm thinking, I might have to bring her to the hospital. Like, I don't know how she's going to handle Father Jerome's death. And then my phone rang, and it was Graham. So I picked up, I'm like, I'm on my way. And she says, never mind. It's not him. It was someone else on the internet with his name. My grandmother was on the internet at 4:30 in the morning Googling Father Jerome's name, and by accident found an obituary with that name. Can you imagine if she found a Father Jerome's OnlyFans page? I mean, oh my God. I just took a deep breath. I said, okay, I'm going back to bed. I turned around, I went back to bed, and now we have more good news because Father Jerome ain't dead. Graham can still masturbate, and guess what? She confessed it all the next Saturday to Father Jerome. That's it. Thank you. 501.
Right, what a way to start this off, huh? I guess, Angela, you know what to expect when Father Jerome does indeed pass. Oof. Anyway, all right. Our next storyteller is Molly Snyder. Molly is one happy camper living in downtown Northampton and the Valley for 50 years. She loves the mountain ranges, meadows, and landscape views that keep surprising her. Molly.
Hi. When I was 35 years old, I moved to Durham, North Carolina, to be closer to family. I didn't really want to spend that much time with family, and so I rented a room in the least expensive place I could find. And this was a room in a house with 4 young male Duke students. They were all serious musicians. And when I interviewed for the place in the house, they had 2 stipulations. One was that I not mind bluegrass music, which was going to be playing for most of the night. I'm a good sleeper, so I didn't mind. The second was that I not do anything at all about housework. It seems that their previous housemate, who had been a woman also, had cajoled, begged, and generally constantly intervened about the housework or lack of. So with those 2 promises, which got me into the house, I began my stay there. I was working part-time as a cook, so I wasn't in the house very often. I ate at the restaurant and spent a lot of time in the library. But as this went on, the house got worse and worse and worse. With, you can imagine, beer bottles, ashtrays, to-go boxes, and more. So at that time, the guys met with me, and they asked me to do something, and it was something which I really didn't like. They asked me if I would be the person in charge of the housework. So that indeed was when I felt my life had really taken a wrong turn. However, I scanned my experience of housework, and basically what happened is when the house was a mess, they asked me, I think I got a little lost, but they asked me if I would be in charge of the housework. So I thought about my experience with housework, and I thought about a pamphlet that I had read called The Politics of Housework. And I also thought about my Marxist feminist therapist who had taught me that life would be better if we all shared the so-called shit work and then we could all do the creative work. Neither of those seem to resonate very much with the current situation. So I then thought about how I read Nancy Drew, volumes 1 to 50, and that helped me. It taught me how to negotiate with my father. Nancy's father was a lawyer, and my father was an accountant. And so when my brother and I wanted to live with my father and not with relatives after my mother had died, I used Nancy's strategy and used reason to convince my father that I would make it work. His concern was that we couldn't make it work. So I then took over everything. This was at age 13. You know, the cooking, the cleaning, but the housework is the point I really wanted to get to. With my 13-year-old adolescent energy, I would do the housework between 5 o'clock and 5:20 every day, 5 days a week. In one hand, I would have a vacuum cleaner. In the other hand, I would have a rag. And I would just run around the house at full speed, making everything work. And when my father came home at 5:20, everything was done, at least from a housework point of view. So with that in mind, I endeavored to take on the housework problem in the house, in the place. And the first thing I did, because there was constant bickering, which wasn't the fault of our previous housemate, about and blaming, I made a rule. And the rule was there was to be no housework done at all until Wednesday night. The guys were a little taken aback by this. And so I compromised, telling them that they could rinse their own dishes. I then got a darkroom timer and set it up. And I got everybody together on a Wednesday night. And in that togetherness, I got cookies, beer, soda, music, chips. And I set the timer, and I said that everybody would be allowed to do housework for 5 minutes. They ran around doing housework just the way I had. We sat down again, reassessed the situation, and then everyone was allowed to do housework for another 5 minutes. And that was it for a week. Well, time went on, and finally the guys approached me saying they'd had a meeting without me. Why? Well, it was about housework. Why did you meet without me about housework? Well, we made a decision, Molly, and we hoped you would like it. We want to do housework not only on Wednesday, but we want to do housework on every Saturday night, too. Thank you.
I wish my mom had done it that way. All right. Next up, we have Andrew Shelffo. He is a teacher and storyteller who lives in Easthampton.
I see you out there, Jerron. It's a cold and raw January evening, and I'm about to have the perfect parking experience, but I don't know that yet. All I know is that right now I'm late to meet my family, and I can't find any place to park, and I'm thinking about my dad, because my dad was the one who taught me how to drive. And he also taught me all the peripheral stuff around driving, which really meant how to manage the crappy cars we had when I was growing up. So that's how I learned to jumpstart a car. That's how I learned to hit a faulty starter motor with a hammer to get it to start. And that's how I learned it was a sad day in history when the automobile manufacturers stopped putting in the triangular vent windows in cars. But he also told me to watch out for the BMWs. And for him, that was code for assholes. one of the first times we were driving together, he was in the passenger seat and I'm driving down the road and he wants me to make a left-hand turn, but there was a guy stopped at the stop sign there who was going to make his own left turn. And I'm driving down the road and I'm a little bit unsure of myself, so I stop when I don't have to, and I wave that guy on and then I go. And my father says to me very quietly but insistently, "Don't ever do that again. Be predictable, follow the rules. The BMWs won't." And I was taking in those words of wisdom when all of a sudden his head disappeared underneath the dashboard while I'm still driving. And then his head pops up again. And he says to me, "You're putting your foot on the brake the wrong way." And I'm like, oh my God, like I'm trying to get ready for my driver's license test and I want my dad to be proud of me, and now my foot's on the brake pedal the wrong way. He's like, "Yeah, you got to put it in the center. You're putting it on the side and it could slip off and cause an accident." I'm like, oh my God, this is horrible. And I spent weeks trying to put my foot in the right place and I couldn't do it. And even after I got my license, I couldn't figure it out. And I was complaining to my brother one day, like, "I'm just doing it wrong." And my brother laughed at me. And I said, "Why are you laughing?" And he said, "Do you ever notice how you get car sick when Dad's driving?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "That's because he has one foot on the gas and one foot on the brake, so you're jerking the whole time." He said, "Don't worry about that." I was like, oh, good, this is a relief. So I'm feeling good. And then I asked Dad, I'm like, "Hey, can I borrow the car?" And the crappy car at this time was a 1969 Firebird, even though it was in the mid-'80s. And he says, "Sure." And I take the keys and I go out to get the car. And he says, wait, I forgot to tell you. The gas pedal, it's missing. He said, "It's okay. You just put your foot on the bar and it's going to work the same way." And I'm thinking, I'm tying myself in knots because I can't put my foot on the brake pedal the right way, but no gas pedal is okay. So after every driving lesson, my dad would insist upon taking me to a parking lot so I could practice parking. And I thought, like, I don't want to do this. Like, what's exciting about parking? But of course, my dad was right because I didn't pay enough attention. And then 6 months after I got my license, I was out with my friend, and we went to his girlfriend's house. And they wanted some alone time, so he gave me the keys to his parents' car, and I drove to the diner like 1 a.m., and I'm pulling to the parking lot, and I don't really know exactly what happened. I must have hit the gas instead of the brake or something, and I skipped over the concrete parking stopper thingy. I went up onto a concrete retaining wall, and the back end of the car was up off the ground, so I couldn't back up. So I had to get the kitchen staff to come out and sit on the back of the car so I could back it up and get it out. And I finally got it home. And then the next morning, I had to go and tell my dad what happened. And I didn't want to do that, of course, because I was sure he was going to yell at me, tell me what I'd done wrong, whatever it was going to be. So I told him the whole story, the lightly edited version. I didn't tell him I was distracted by Jane in the passenger seat. He listened very quietly and calmly. And then when I was done, he said something I'll never forget. He said, "Well, at least it wasn't our car." So I'm thinking about this on this January night as I'm driving around trying to find a parking space. And all in this area where the restaurants are where I'm trying to go, it's all angled parking. And I noticed a car coming in the other lane, and then all of a sudden, and it's a BMW, and it puts its left blinker on. And I look to my right, and I see what it sees. And I pull into the space. And I get out of the car, and I start walking to the restaurant. Like, great, I found a space. And I hear a voice say, "Hey, you took my parking space." And I don't say anything. I just point to the sign that says, "No left turn into parking spaces." Because as my dad told me, to be a good parker, you have to know the rules. Then I hear another voice, the same voice, it's closer this time. It says, "You ought to be ashamed of yourself." Now, I'm in my 30s at this point. And I've been in exactly 3 fights in my life, if you don't count the ones against my little sister. And I have a perfect 0-3 record. But I turn around and I take a step towards the guy. Because what he doesn't know is that 14 hours earlier, I was in the hospital with my siblings, and we were surrounding my father's hospital bed as he passed away. And I so want to be the aggressor. I want to know what it feels like to break the rules. I want to know what it feels like to be the BMW guy. And as I take that step towards him, I hear someone call my name. and it's my little sister. And it feels so great at that moment to be recognized. And the guy, maybe he sensed something in my appearance, or maybe he was scared of my little sister, I don't know. He turned around and he walked the other way. And it was great having my sister there because she knows what I'm going through. Because after all, Dad taught her how to drive too. So I got my parking place, I found my family, we walked into the restaurant, and we planned a memorial service with love in our hearts, and it was perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. All right, our next storyteller is Ilene Marcus. She's got a fan. Ilene Marcus lives in the Berkshires and spent years leading large public service systems as a change agent. She now writes and invents practical solutions, including the Ilene Pan, and I'm sure she'll tell you about it if you ask her, offering grounded ways to live with change rather than fight it. Ilene.
Thank you. I was in a panic. I got a call from my daughter that she was in the hospital in North Carolina at college. That's why we always say, go somewhere as driving distance. I don't want to have to get on a plane when I'm in a crisis, right? And it happened. So I get in the car, and the only thing I took was this huge tumbler of coffee. And I am driving quick, around things, over the Baltimore Tunnel, around DC, did not get lost in the loop. I am weaving and bobbing and literally and metaphorically trying to stay in my own lane to save my baby, because that's what we do as moms, right? To get there and make sure she's okay. And I am about an hour from the school when I have to pee so bad, there was no way that I couldn't stop. I am on a stretch of the highway where there's just swamp on either side. Just swamp. 15 miles. I'm squirming, I'm keegling, I'm, thinking like what's gonna happen to the leather seats? Is this my car? Wish it was someone else's. Everything I could do. I am cursing every one of you men that can just pee in a bottle while you're sitting, right? I am furious. So I'm driving, I'm thinking I can stop on the side of the road, but I see it, all these semis, and I see the headline, Mom dies trying to save daughter driving in distance to college because the semi swipes me. So I keep going, and finally I see a little exit, and it was not one of these nice exits. There was no knife and fork sign or hotel sign, just an exit, and I swerve off, and what do you know? More semi trucks. And the longest runway you ever saw. And I kept on trying to pull over, and I couldn't, and I'm trying to pull over, and I couldn't. And finally, I get to the end, and there's a faint yellow light. And come hell or high water, whatever's there, I'm going. Strip joint, pole joint, gun store, taxidermy, I'm in. I gotta pee. I go, and it's a little tiny Shell station, a little dated, and there's a sign, bathroom downstairs. I whip the car around, I step out, I walk down the stairs, and I'm like, this is really where people die. It was like a little concrete thing. I go to turn the door, and it's locked. Oh my God. I pull down my pants, no girdle, just natural. I pull down my pants, and a headlight comes at me, and I'm like, oh, this is how you really die in North Carolina. Pull them back up, run up. The clerk must have been experienced because she had the key ready. She gives me the key, I run down, I pee, I come up, and then there's this tall man and this clerk that I swear wasn't the clerk that was there 5 minutes before, but they're there, and I'm like all nervous, and what do I do when I'm nervous? I talk. Oh, I have to go to the bathroom, I'm saving my daughter, da, 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 da. And the guy looks at me and says, you that astronaut? You that astronaut? Now, I'm gonna slow this down because I had no idea what he was saying. Are you that astronaut? And I'm like, astronaut? I'm a mother trying to save my daughter. I guess that is a good NASA mission. I am trying to save my daughter. Finally, are you that astronaut? I go, yes, I am that astronaut. And he says, no, I said, what astronaut? He goes, you know that NASA-trained astronaut that put on Pampers and drove 900 miles to yell at her boyfriend had been in the news, and apparently she passed this way. I don't know if he was reliving his glory day or he really thought I was that astronaut. Finally, I said, yes, I am that astronaut. I knew it. And I look at him, I say, and are you the Marlboro Man? He goes, I am the Marlboro Man. And from there, we were off. Are you that CIA informant? Are you that police guy? Are you that woman who had sex in an airplane? And we are bantering back and forth. What do you got in that car? Fireworks? No, I should tell you. At this point, because I was rushing to see my baby, I was wearing a sundress with no bra, cowboy boots. I still had my sunglasses on in the dark of night because I couldn't stop to take them off. I was in a rush. And the top was down, not in a BMW. The top was down, and my hair was crazy. But I am going back and forth with him. Are you that girl that put that fire in that cabin? We are laughing and going back and forth and having a great time until I had to pee again. And I said, what should I do? Should I actually go get the diapers or should I take the key? And I took the key and I went back downstairs to the place where I thought I was going to die in the cave. And I peed and I came back up and I said, I bought something. And I said my goodbyes and we hugged and we kissed. We really had a good time. We were hysterical, laughing like I knew them forever. The stories I told them, I can't even say on stage. The things we said. And as I got into the car, I realized that a half an hour had passed. A half an hour where I was rushing to see my baby, and I was rushing and rushing. And with that one wrong turn, I learned that really stopping sometimes is the sweetest thing you can do.
All right, thank you. All right, and this is our last storyteller of this half. We have with us Cole Whitaker, who is an accidental amateur filmmaker and a social studies teacher who uses teaching as a substitute for the stand-up comedy career he never had. He lives with his wife and daughters in Coleraine, Massachusetts.
So about 2 years ago, my wife's neck exploded. She's okay. That seems to answer most people's first question. And it turns out there is a fancy medical name for neck explosions. When she was in the hospital the first time, we found out it's called a spontaneous carotid artery dissection. Spontaneous because there's no known reason or trigger for it. Her carotid artery just wanted to spice things up a little bit. The carotid artery is what brings blood to your brain, and the dissection refers to the explosion. It ruptured inside her neck, causing internal bleeding and blocking blood flow to her brain. So she got to the hospital in time. The doctors were able to help control the situation, but it was a really close call and could have ended much worse. And ever since then, she's had all these crazy symptoms. Her hands have swelled up so badly she had to have her wedding ring cut off. Her joints get so inflamed she can barely walk at times. She has near constant headaches, trouble finding words, and on and on and on. And none of this stuff had ever happened before. We ended up rushing to the hospital a second time when she started losing her vision. Temporarily, thankfully, but it became one of these infuriating situations where you're left just shaking your head because even with all the doctors and tests and technology, they still couldn't tell us anything useful. They were happy to charge us for it nonetheless. But they were sending us back out with no hint of a path forward, and it was terrifying. This was the woman I loved most in the world. And we'd been together 11 years at that time. We had 2 little girls. And I was sitting there thinking, what if next time the doctors can't help her? What if next time I come to the hospital, I end up leaving alone, going home to tell our daughters that Mom's not coming home? But while I was sitting there, I was reminded, too, of a time we had spent together early on after we'd first met. We'd gone up to this pond near where we lived to try to look at the stars from a canoe at night. And it was a moonless, cloudless night. The stars were just spectacular. They were reflecting so clearly in the water. It was like we were floating in the sky out there. And we just lay back and chatted and gazed and were falling in love for hours out there. Eventually, some clouds rolled in, and when we sat up to go, we realized that we couldn't see anything. And I don't mean like vague shapes in the darkness. I mean, we couldn't see anything. We couldn't even tell which way the shore was. So we just had to paddle around until we ran into the shore, and then we paddled around the edge until we ran into the dock. And back on land, things weren't any better. We couldn't see an inch in front of our faces. And we knew this area really well, but it was a twisting path back to a logging road through these dense Vermont woods to get back home. And as we started going, we were tripping on roots and bumping into trees every step of the way. We had to hold hands just to keep from losing each other in the darkness. And we were out there for hours and hours for what should have taken about 5 minutes, just stumbling in the darkness. And trying to follow this path, we had no clue which way we were going. We didn't know which way might be the right or wrong turn at any point. And it could have ended up a pretty bad situation. We could have gotten truly lost or really hurt if we had been alone. But because we were together, it was okay. It didn't matter so much exactly which way we were going. It didn't matter if we took a wrong turn. Because while we stumbled and swore, we also joked and laughed and helped and held on to each other through it all until we made our way out. And 11 years later, sitting in that hospital room, I felt like we were back in the dark again. Nobody could shed any light on why these things were happening or when they might happen again. We didn't know if my wife would ever get better or what we could do about any of it. We had no clue. We still have no clue how to move forward, which way to turn next. It feels like we're just stumbling through the darkness again. And when we were out there in the woods, we were getting slapped in the face every step of the way. And it feels like the same thing's happening again, only the branches are slapping a lot harder this time. This time it feels like if we fall down, we might not both get back up this time. But I was comforted, too, by the memory of that night spent in the woods. And I hope she is as well, because I know that even if we are just stumbling blindly through the dark, there are no wrong turns as long as we're there together, joking and laughing and helping and holding on to each other through it all. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So those were our first 5 storytellers of the night. We're going to have 5 more. We're going to have a 15-minute intermission before we have those folks come up. Just a quick reminder again, as you're mingling during intermission, there are posters with the QR code for the voting form, which will be published at the end of the show, but that's where you can grab it if you need to. And go get yourself a drink and have a good time, and we'll see you back here in 15 minutes. All right, our 15 minutes is up. Start making your way back to your seats. I'm going to say a few things. You've got a little time if you need to finish up a conversation. It's fine. It's fine. All right, so just a few things real quickly. Again, voting will be at the end of the last storyteller. It is a Google form. If you've already scanned the QR code, you'll see that it's not published, but at the time of voting, it will be. At that point, all you'll have to do is just refresh your browser. You don't have to rescan. So you'll be able to just refresh your browser. Once that's published, it'll just come up for you. Also, the QR code will be on the screen as well at that point. And if you haven't logged on to the Wi-Fi, it's right up here. The network is Marigold Theater, and the password is circa 1923. So make sure that you're logged onto the Wi-Fi so that you can vote. All right. Let me tell you a little wrong turn story of my own. I've never admitted this to my brother, but he's not here. and he'll never hear this. When I was right after I graduated from college, I lived in Florida for a while, and I interned at a theater down there. And when I moved home, my brother came down to help me pack up and move up. And that was, that was a while ago. That was before Google Maps, which I personally am directionally challenged, so I really love Google Maps. But we had a triptych from AAA, and he was driving, and it was like a 17-hour drive, because I lived in Ohio at the time. So it was a 17-hour drive from Sarasota to Sugar Creek, where I'm from. And my brother was driving this one particular stretch of road, and it was the middle of the night, because we thought, oh, we're in our early 20s. We should drive in the middle of the night. It's so easy. Mistake. I was supposed to be watching the triptych. And I wasn't. And I don't remember where we ended up, but he was not happy. And I was like, oh, the triptych must have been wrong. That was, what's that? Yeah. That was like 22 years ago. And I still haven't told him. And I never will. I never will. Okay, anyway, so that's my little wrong turn story. All right. Thank you. All right, so we are moving on to our next storyteller, our first one after intermission. So our next storyteller is Chris Bell. Chris Bell is the guy you see walking the streets alone, intensely talking to himself while practicing a story.
So the bartender rings the bell for last call, and my girlfriend Laura leans in with a mischievous smile. Babe, I feel like being bad tonight, so I perk up. Oh, really? She bites her bottom lip and says, I'm in the mood for a really big pizza with onions and extra cheese. So, eager to play a little game of foodie foreplay, I say, look, this is our first time in Montreal. Let's try something different tonight. Then I describe a legendary local dish that's known for being sinfully savory and satisfying. Her eyes close with a smile that simply says, oh yeah, big boy, let's do it. So after enjoying several hours of happy hour, we stumble out into the night, and I realize I have no idea where to find this food. Plus, it's 2001. Smartphones don't exist, so there's no Google, GPS, or DoorDash. So as I stare at this strange city, I'm afraid the only thing I'm about to get my girlfriend is a cold plate of disappointment. But then I look up the street and I spot the universal symbol for local knowledge and guidance, a taxi cab. And as soon as I wave it down, it comes in hot, clipping the curb, nearly cracking a hubcap. An older driver with a scruffy beard as thick as his glasses leans out and says, hey, my brother, where you headed? So we slide into his back seat without a second thought. Now we're surrounded by the scent of cigarettes and stale coffee, and I tell him about the legendary local dish we're looking to try, and his eyes light up. Ooh, I know the perfect place. Trust me, brother. And with the click of the meter, the streets become a blur. So I ask him, where is this place? And he says something in a French accent so thick, we'd need subtitles to understand. And because we left our better judgment back at the bar, we just trust that he said someplace with good grub. Now, we don't even get 2 blocks before this seasoned cabbie turns into a chatty teenager. He's peppering us with random questions about religion, resurrection, reincarnation. All the while, he's peering through the rearview mirror, shooting these little flirty looks at Laura. But we are so drunk, we just laugh and get caught up in his crazy conversation. Because this guy, he is a complete character. So sometime in between deep belly laughs, I happen to look out the window, and I realize that the city lights are gone. We're just on a long stretch of highway surrounded by dark, dense forest. So I look at the meter, and what I thought was only going to be a $5 fare, it's already $35. Sensing my silence, Laura stops laughing. So I asked this guy, "Hey, where are we?" And he goes, "Just 2 more minutes." So I lean forward, grab the back of the seat, and say, "Look, forget about the food." And his eyes go wide, like a confused toddler. But why? We're almost there. Trust me, brother." And then he accelerates, all while muttering something that makes him sound as stable as a one-legged ladder. Now my mind is going through full horror movie mode. It feels like we're captives in a moving cage with cannibals and Klansmen waiting for us in some secluded cabin. And I'm hoping we don't have to jump out, because at this rate of speed, we definitely break every bone as we roll down the road. I mean, my heart is pounding, but instead of panicking, I take a deep breath. And I give Laura's hand a reassuring squeeze. And she squeezes back, letting me know it's okay to wait and see where he's taking us. After several manic minutes, we finally pull off the highway, and we roll into a small rustic town with silent streets and sleepy storefronts. The only light is coming from 3 small basement windows as we pull up to a remote building at the end of the road. He gets out and scurries towards the basement entrance, leaving us sitting in the cab. Now my hands are shaking. Laura's nails are digging into my forearm, and we are both bracing for fight or flight. But we don't even get a chance to react, because as soon as he opens that basement door, we get ambushed by the sound of music and laughter. Laura and I exchange a look, and our concern turns to curiosity. So we get out of the cab and follow the rhythm down the stairs. And once our eyes adjust to the light, we see a beautiful wooden bar surrounded by people holding pints and pool sticks. Our driver steps up from the crowd. "These are my friends, Chris and Laura from the States." And a kaleidoscope of smiles warms the room. We're seated at a center table and surrounded by courteous questions. Then Laura's eyes double in size when the legendary local dish lands before us. It is a massive plate of golden fries smothered in silky brown gravy and sprinkled with tender chunks of cheese. Our driver beams, "That's the best poutine in all Quebec." As we eat, we learned our driver, Renee, brought us to a late-night tavern in his hometown where the cab community comes to unwind after work. And we spend the remainder of the night listening to stories from the folks who know the people of Montreal, as well as they know the streets that connect them. On the ride back, the long ride back, Renee plays a series of old French love songs as Laura sleeps soundly on my shoulder. And we arrive back at our hotel just as the morning light starts to stretch softly across the city. But now I look at the meter, and our fare is, it's mysteriously $0. So I give Renee 80. He looks at it, and he gives me back 60. And when I ask him, "Are you sure?" he just smiles and says, "Yes. Trust me, brother."
All right, thank you. All right, up next is Paul McNeil. Paul McNeil is a youth substance prevention specialist and experienced performer who has spent over 20 years engaging audiences through improv, theater, and storytelling. The 7th of 8 Scottish-Lithuanian-ish kinda Catholic kids from central Massachusetts. He lives in Easthampton with his wife, 2 sons, and Winnie, the family's yellow dog.
25 years ago, I had a very close encounter with the mafia. I was selected to represent my small college on a 2-week, all expenses paid cultural exchange trip to Tokyo, Japan. And I was selected because of my academic excellence, my commitment to community service, my achievements in the performing arts, and because I was the only one who had applied. And I was really nervous about going to Japan and being that ugly American, because I'm pretty big, I'm pretty loud, and Japan is famous, a famous society that prides itself on modesty and being quiet and small. And sure enough, as soon as I set foot off the plane in Tokyo, I stood out. And I stood out kind of like, those inflatable 20-foot tall noodle men you'll see at like a used car dealership? Just imagine one of those, but like plugged in the middle of a Zen garden. I had an amazing trip. I had copious amounts of sushi. I sang a lot of karaoke. I went to kabuki theater. I experienced tea ceremonies. And I had so many laughs with my new Japanese friends. And toward the end of the trip, it was recommended that we go to a traditional sento, which is a Japanese bathhouse in a neighborhood in Tokyo. And sentos are cool. They're huge. There's like a side for the men, a side for the women, and they're enormous, like the size of a high school gym, powder blue tile, like floor to ceiling, and a lot of pools. And there's like a cold water pool, there's a bubbling cold water pool, there's a salt water pool, and there's like a pool with infused tea water, and there's a hot pool, there's a very hot pool, there's a flaming hot pool, there's like a cool ranch pool, I think was the flavor, and it was a really amazing, relaxing way to wrap up the trip. And I was headed out of the sento, and a sauna caught my eye, and I love sauna. And so I turned toward the sauna. I'd never been to a Japanese sauna, and I squeaked the door open and just smacked by that heat, 120 degrees. It was like a wall sort of pushing me back out of the sauna. So I shut the door behind me, and the sauna was packed with men. And they were quiet and still. Their eyes were closed. And there was like barely a spot for me up on the third tier. And so I like wiggled my way up quietly. And I squeezed in and closed my eyes, sat down, and I reflected on the trip. And I'd done a great job. I didn't make too many big mistakes. I was respectful. I apologized a ton. Sumimasen, sumimasen. I said thank you at least 2 times to every person. Arigato, arigato. And I was humble. I was so humble. I was probably the most humble. And after about 10 minutes in the sauna, I started to get lightheaded, and I thought, I gotta get out of here. So I opened my eyes and I looked for a path out, and that's when I saw it. The dragons. Every man, there's probably 15 men in the sauna, every man had a full back dragon tattoo. And I was in a sauna with the Yakuza, the Japanese mafia. And the Japanese mafia are pretty well known for having, full body tattoos, but also for unpredictable acts of violence. And I really didn't want to participate in that. And so I thought that I would flee. And so I stepped down to the next tier, and then I was trying to get to the first tier. And on my way to the first tier, stepping over a man, and my knee goes right into his shoulder. And it was like one of those slow motion karate knees, like right to the face of the dragon that's on the corner of his shoulder. And I freeze, and time stands still. And this is a great time to tell you that we could not have been more naked. And I'm not as concerned about kneeing his shoulder as I am about his face being 6 inches from my balls. And I'm also realizing and remembering, we're in Japan, like the most modest society on the planet. And it's so modest, like they don't even allow public hugging. Like I tried to give my homestay brother a hug, and he just grabbed my hands and started shaking them up and down, saying, "We don't do that here." And my life was really starting to flash before my eyes, and the gentleman turned his head, he smiled, he bowed, and then he turned back to meditating. And he never once opened his eyes. And even though he wasn't looking at me, I felt obliged to bow back to him. And I said, "Sumimasen," and I fled. And I got out of the sauna, and I'm rapidly putting my clothes back on. And I was sort of overwhelmed with gratitude, because I just sat in a sauna with like a group of the most dangerous men in the Eastern Hemisphere, and I'd shown them my wacky noodle man and my ugly American, and they politely let me live to tell the story. Arigato.
Okay. All right. Next up, we have Larry Childs, who resides in Williamsburg. His career path and many life choices have arisen from a propensity to trust too quickly and say yes. Yes to risks and invitations others might have questioned. Hence his current work in immigration services, earlier career in adventure education, and events captured in his story tonight.
Well, it was a cold January afternoon when the research center's wildlife biologist handed me a heavy set of leather gloves. And he indicated that these, along with a sturdy backpack, was all I would need to capture a porcupine for my studies. I could have asked more questions then, but I didn't. For context, I'd already spent a full college semester at the Center for Northern Studies in the Northeast Kingdom of Vermont, and this was my winter term project. What it was really about was I had to capture a couple of porcupines, anesthetize them, and then secure a radio telemetry collar around the neck, which is like today's tracking device. And then free them to make observations. So I took the gloves, stuffed them into the backpack, and accompanying me was a supervising professor of ecology along with a few fellow classmates who were just curious. And after trudging through the woods off trail in the snow for like an hour, we came upon fresh porcupine track, which we followed up onto a ridge. And there, beneath the gnarling roots of a monstrous yellow birch tree was an opening, So a couple of my classmates came up, and they stood kind of like sentinels on either side. And we weren't really clear about what they were going to do for me, but I think we instinctively knew that no one should disappear into a wild animal den with at least others to bear witness. So I went in first with my arms, and then head and shoulders, and couldn't see a thing initially, but I inched a little bit further forward, and a sliver of light came in, and in the back corner was a porcupine whining. I could hear it. It was like the size of a basketball, with quills, and maybe about 15 pounds. So I approached it with my gloves, one arm out, and the tail whipped with considerable force and actually shoved 2 quills right through the glove. And I backed off, removed the quills, a little disappointed in my impenetrable armor here. But I resolved this would take being a little more assertive. So I approached again with 2 hands this time and grabbed the tail really quickly. And when I was sure of my grip, I then knew the purpose of my classmates, because all that was sticking out of the den at this point were my feet, and I couldn't move. So I called for them to pull me out. And in their enthusiasm, rather than like a slow extraction, they pulled me as if I was like in a burning fire, And I just popped like a cork out of the den. Came landing on my feet, fortunately, arms extended, porcupine still in hand. And as I descended the slope and I turned, I saw my professor, who was standing there. His arms were crossed like this, feet planted, just like supremely confident and comfortable, a man of the North Woods, in winter. Well, it was his right leg, knee level, where the porcupine struck like a meteorite, right? He instantly doubled over in agony, and I could see like 20 quills pinning his woolen pants to flesh. Now, I faced a dilemma. On the one hand, I felt obligated to help him out. On the other hand, I wasn't about to let the porcupine go. But I turned and Judith, a classmate, was standing right there. And so I asked her to hold the porcupine, which she obliged by the tail. And I frantically started like pulling quills. But then Judith shrieked. The porcupine, with like abs of steel, had lifted itself up, its head high enough to bite her finger. But she knew how important this was to me, and she did not let go. So it was at that point that I remembered, the sturdy backpack. So I pulled out the backpack, and together we slid the porcupine head first into the backpack and cinched up the cord. So with most of the quills removed and Judith's bloody finger wrapped up, I pulled on the backpack and we headed out. So arriving back at the center, the wildlife biologist is there waiting for us with his feet up, reading a book by the wood stove. I put the backpack on a table. He pulls out a syringe, anesthetize the porcupine, shows me how to attach the collar, how to use the remote control device. And then as Judith and the professor drove off to the emergency room, I took the porcupine out into the woods, set it down, knowing that soon it would wake up and go about its routine again, even if a little geographically confused. So in the ensuing weeks, I checked on my porcupines every day. I did get a second one, actually. But I was feeling a little guilty because back in the center, the professor was limping around, right? Until one day he announced that the quills that the ER doctors had been unable to remove, right, had, as they said they would, migrated across his knee until they poked out of the skin on the other side. Well, relieved that he was okay, I started to reflect on this whole experience. And, it occurred to me that over the course of human history, while there may have been one or two other students who in their frustration had assaulted their professors with porcupines, I was pretty confident that I was the only one who had ever done so by accident. Thank you.
Well, Larry, at least you weren't on the receiving end. Yeah. Okay, next up we have Lee Cornfeld, who is the director of the 5 College Women's Studies Research Center and a professor at Mount Holyoke College. This is her first onstage performance in 15 years. Welcome, Lee.
We returned a dusty Chevy Aveo to the airport parking lot and found out that we owed $35 in damages. We had thought we might be on the hook for thousands of dollars or for a whole Chevy Aveo. The Aveo is a small-ish sedan. It has 4 doors, but it's still pretty snug for 4 people with luggage. In the driver's seat is Matthew, my partner. He and I have made this trip before. In the back seat are Jessica and Paul. We've invited them to spend a week's vacation with us in a town called Mito. But that's actually putting it a little bit generously. Mito is not really a town. It is a super remote outpost on the Pacific coast of Mexico. To get there from the Puerto Vallarta airport, it is about a 2-hour drive along roads that pass increasingly rural scenery until at the end, you're driving on nothing but sand. In the passenger seat is me, because I am the navigator. This is a mistake. We have been driving for more than 2 hours, and we still have not hit Mito. So I check Google Maps. We don't have reception at this point, but the map of the area is still visible, and I realize that about an hour into our drive, we missed a turn. But it's okay. There's a shortcut. We double back, just like slightly. We turn around, and on our right side, just as Google Maps promised, there is a small clearing. We turn into it, and the ground is sandy, but Paul and Jessica are a little nervous, and Matt assures them that this is totally normal. This is what happens here. But then the ground isn't just sandy, it's also like grassy. And the grass is tall. Like really tall green and tan grass that's like window height. Also, the road becomes increasingly rocky, like really jaggedy. Like the car is moving this way and we are bumping, and then suddenly it's like we're turning this way and we're turning this way and it's really jaggedy. And Matt looks at me and Matt says like, okay, how much longer before the road becomes straight? And I say, I don't know, like maybe a third of the way there. And Matt looks at me with like a slowly dawning horror that I will never unsee. It becomes pretty clear that this is a road that is meant for horses and donkeys and not Chevy Aveos. But we persevere. At one point, it becomes so rocky at such a sharp incline that Paul and Jessica and I have to get out of the car so that Matt can have the oomph to get it up these rocks. And Paul looks at me with astonishment. And he says, Matt is such a good driver. Like he knows that Matt is such a good driver. Even in this crazy landscape, we are going to be fine. We will make it to this place where the road becomes straight. But Jessica is also at this point looking at Google Maps. And it turns out that when things were getting really rocky earlier, she very surreptitiously had popped a Xanax. So she is very calm as she looks at the map and says, the place where the road becomes straight, I think the road might be a river. We get there, and the river is wide, and it is deep, and there is no way that we can traverse it in a Chevy Aveo. So we turn around, and we immediately blow a tire. Okay, a lot of things happen at this point in the story that I do not have time to relate to you this evening. Briefly, how do we get this car out of this ravine? Is it going to live there forever? Are we going to be paying off this car for the rest of our lives? How are we going to get to Mito? What about our luggage? Also, it is getting dark. So suddenly we're like, okay, we think about camping in the car. We think about camping outside the car. We think briefly about trying to rent some horses. And actually, we make some headway on that path, which I will tell you about some other time. The part of the story that I want to leave you with here is what happens when we start walking with our phones out and we get just like a smidgen of reception. but it is enough. And we call the woman who runs the bay of rooms that we are renting on the coast, Jenny. And Jenny says, "Get to the main road before it gets dark. I will see if I can activate civil protection." What is civil protection is something that we wonder as we are making our way to the main road. We don't make it there before it gets dark, but that is okay. Because when we get there, there is a large white vehicle with a big flashing blue light. There is an older man, there is a younger man. They are ready, they have tools, they have something to raise our car, they fixed the car, they patched the tire, or I think they actually changed it. We patched it later. The $35 that we owed at the end of this story, that's what it cost. We were paying for the patch on the tire, and that was it. Everything was fine. And the reason I want to tell you this part of the story right now, from this vantage point of the United States, 2025, is that civil protection is a Mexican federal agency whose agents activate immediately to provide urgent assistance to citizens and non-citizens alike. And I am so in awe. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, and our last storyteller of the evening is Michael Buster McMahon. He is a playwright whose works are seen on 50 public access channels in 3 states and on YouTube. This past year, his play Sanctuary Much was put on by the Exit 7 Players, and he directed an off-Broadway play on 42nd Street in New York.
As angry and as frustrated as I was lost. I took a couple wrong turns, left, right, got on the wrong train. I didn't know where I was. I couldn't help but think of the guy who robbed me and laugh. Let me go back here. The year was 19 And my college crush calls me and says, can you do me a favor? I immediately said, yes. College crush, what would you say? And she's like, will you have the Midas touch when it comes to responsibility? Ooh, I like where this is going. Yeah, Tom and I are going to take a trip and we need your help. Oh, good, you and Tom are still together. Yeah. They wanted me to do apartment, sit for them in Manhattan and keep an eye on their dog. They were going to Greece. The country, not the musical. You generally don't need people to watch your apartment if you're going to go watch a musical. And I said, what the heck? I'll do this. I'll help them out. And then I get to stay in Manhattan for a week and a half for free. This would be kind of cool. How tough can it be to watch a dog, right? So I meet Sarge, a big, tough, mean-looking Rottweiler. But hey, I got the golden touch here, right? I got the Midas touch. This is going to work out fine. And you know what? I got to tell you, he was a sweet old soul. We got along so great. He used to watch the TV with me. He'd sit on the couch with me. We'd go to the park. We'd play ball. Sometimes I would lay down with him when he was eating, and I would eat my food too, just so we could be on the same level. We're like bros. And he had this really funny thing too, is like, if you opened a can of beer, he would immediately howl. Like he was a stockholder in Anheuser-Busch or something, And he probably would actually enjoy a beer, because I think legally he was over the age of 3. Thank you. Sorry about that one. I had to sneak that one in. But no, I did not give the dog beer, because beer is not good for dogs. So one day, though, I'm sitting on the couch watching TV. I open a can of beer. Nothing. No howl. Where is he? Oh, there he is. He's over there. He's napping. No, he wasn't napping. Did I do something wrong? Did I kill my college crush's dog? And so I'm like, so immediately, like, I tried calling them, but they were in Greece, the country. And the only numbers I could find was on the phone book. I found the vet, so I called the vet and I said, "Hi, I'm Michael. I'm calling about Lynn Hoyle's dog, Sarge." And he said, "Oh, are you taking care of the dog?" And I said, "Well, not good care of it. He's dead." And he's like, "Well," he reassured me. He's like, "The dog was very, very old. I'm not surprised that this happened. If you could, bring him to me, I'll take care of it." Bring it to him? How am I going to bring him this dog? So I'm looking through the house, and I found a suitcase that didn't make the cut for Grease, the musical, or probably the show. Although I guess beauty school dropout, I guess it could have been handy. So I'm lost. I don't know the New York subways. I'm going left, I'm taking lefts, I'm taking rights. I don't know where I'm going. And lugging this dog around, I am now so tired. So finally I get on the right train. But I am really tired from taking all these wrong turns and exits and everything. I'm having trouble getting the suitcase over the turnstile. But there was this helpful sideburn fella. He says, "Well, I'll help you." I'm like, "All right, cool." So I do that, he grabs it, and then he runs. He steals the bag. He steals Sarge. Yeah, I've got the Midas touch. Everything I touch turns into a muffler. No, I was just picturing this guy, like, when he finally got away, like, open up, did I get some clothes, some family heirlooms? What the hell? So when I finally tell Lynn, she was very understanding. She's like, "He was very old, and I'm sorry, I apologize that you had to go through this." She's so sweet. But she's like, "You know what?" She's like, "His gift to us always was, he always brought us great joy, and he brought you great joy. And maybe that was his final gift to all of us. In that sick story as it was, his disappearance brought us an unbelievable story. So if you could raise your imaginary beer cans to Sarge, wherever you ended up."
Ooh, all right, thank you. Okay, it is just about time to vote. Before we do that, we're gonna bring all the storytellers up on stage. I'm gonna remind you of who they are and what their stories are, and then you will be able to vote. So storytellers, if you would just come around here, up on stage, doesn't matter what order you're in. What's that? In a minute. I don't want to blind anyone up. Yeah.
What'd you like?
In the white sweater in the aisle on the left over there.
All right. So our first storyteller was Angela Grout, Graham's Confession. Molly Snyder, Boys and Housework. Andrew Shelffo, Parking is Hard. Yeah. Ilene Marcus, The Bathroom Key. Cole Whitaker, Stumbling in the Dark. Chris Bell, Northern Hospitality. Paul McNeil, The Boy Surrounded by the Dragon Tattoo. Larry Childs, My Professors and the Porcupine. Lee Cornfeld, The Rental Car. And Michael Buster McMahon, One Dog Night. All right, you can have a seat if you'd like. And I'm going to put the QR code up here in just a second. You're going to be able to vote for 2 storytellers. We're going to give you about a song's length of time to do that. So Toby, if you'd play us a song, you can grab that. Yeah, thank you. You can grab the QR code. It'll be up here in just a second, and they're on those posters. And let's see who our finalists are. All right, the votes are in. But before I tell you our finalists, I have a few things I want to say. All right. First of all, again, thank you so much to the Marigold for hosting us tonight. What a lovely space. It's been really wonderful. They've taken great care of us. They've been great. Our next show, if you could go to the next slide. Our next show is coming up on March 19th, Thursday, March 19th at the Shea Theater in Turners Falls. Those tickets are not on sale yet, but they will be soon. So watch our social media. I've got our social media up here. If you don't follow us, you should. And our next theme is homecoming. So we'll see what we get for homecoming. That'll be fun. If you would like to audition, if you want to be up here telling stories, you can do that. Auditions open on Sunday for homecoming at the Shea Theater on March 19th. And watch our social media, but I'll tell you there is a phone number that you call. It is just a simple voicemail audition. It goes right to my desk. And I'm not going to pick up the phone. I'm just going to let it go to voicemail. And you get to leave your voicemail. You leave your name and your contact information and like the first line or so of your story. And that's it. It's really simple. So those auditions open on Sunday, and they will be open at a date, till a date that I forget off the top of my head, but you will find it on our social media. Okay. All right. So I would like one more time to shout out to our storytellers who had the guts to get up here today. And tell their stories, because that can be really hard. And if you audition, you'll know. Okay. All right. So now we have our 3 finalists. So if I call your name, please come on up here and join me. And these 3 people are going to advance in April to the Best of Valley Voices Story Slam. Again, competing with the top 3 people from November and the top 3 people coming up in March. So our 3rd place winner is Paul McNeil. Our 2nd place winner. Our 2nd place winner tonight is Lee Cornfeld. And our 1st place finalist this evening is Chris Bell. Congratulations. So, come back to the Academy of Music in April, see these folks tell their stories along with 3 other ones, 3 more finalists for this season. Don't forget to audition. If you told a story tonight and you didn't place, you can still audition for homecoming and you can still get into Best of Valley Voices. You can't. Okay. Once again, thank you so much for being an amazing audience. Have a good night. Drive safely. Goodbye.